I'm the one who fetched your wife, got her involved. Got a responsibility to you both. And I've killed more Indians than everyone here put together.
Well, it's an ugly boast.
It isn't a boast, but a fact.
Bone Tomahawk is a film that came out in 2010 and is written and directed by S. Craig Zahler. So Bone Tomahawk was actually this week's Patriot Poll winner. I unfortunately did not get a chance to watch 8.5, which is obviously written and directed by Fellini. I promise to finally watch 8.5 this week and put out a review for you guys this upcoming weekend. But either way, Bone Tomahawk was a film that I was honestly quite surprised to see win the Patron Poll. Because it was up against a lot of older and more well-known and well-respected indie art house films like Eyes Without a Face, Close Up, and, films like that. So to see a film like Bone Tomahawk win was quite surprising, but I was incredibly excited because I have seen Brawl in Cell Block 99, which is a film that my good friend Perry let me borrow. For those of you who watch the Criterion Halls and watch some of the newer release reviews, know who he is, but he let me borrow this film for almost over a year at this point, and we watched it during a Discord chat movie night, which, by the way, $5 a month and you get access to the Discord chat. It's loads of fun. But we had a movie night and we decided to watch Brawl in Cell Block 99, and it finally gave me the excuse to pop in Perry's DVD, by the way, and I really enjoyed it. This is a film that I thought was absolutely brutal and has a lot of other qualities that I won't quite dive into right now. But needless to say, I actually did enjoy this film. We'll see if Perry ever gets this DVD back. Honestly, I don't even think he would want this because he's now seen the Criterion light and he's just never turned back. But Bone Tomahawk is quite a different film in terms of setting and genre. Because Bone Tomahawk is what some people like to categorize as a Western horror. I mean, I personally probably wouldn't go as far as to call it a horror. But there are horrific elements to this film, especially considering how incredibly brutal it gets. Because, as I mentioned, Brawl in Cell Block 99 is brutal as shit. But I think that Bone Tomahawk might have one of the most brutal moments that I've ever seen put to film. I mean, it's medieval style level of horror. It's one scene in particular, and everybody who has seen this film already knows the exact scene I'm talking about. But that scene blew my goddamn mind and kind of had my jaw on the floor. But one thing I really liked about this film that is also a similar positive I had with Brawl in Cell Block 99 is that this film is completely unafraid to take its time. I could see a lot of people going into this film, maybe film lovers will have a lot easier time with it, but I can see a lot of casual moviegoers going into this film and expecting something that's, a bit more high octane, a little bit more action packed. But this film, most of this film is actually pretty tame. And, again, it's unafraid to move at a pace and focus on these story and character elements and emphasize the kind of treacherous and unforgiving nature of what it's like to travel a fairly large distance in the late 1800s West. And I think it demonstrates that incredibly well and is honestly never boring. It's basically just you following these characters on this type of heroic rescue mission, which, by the way, is going completely against the odds. A lot of these characters, in my opinion, that are on this mission to save a certain character, they're, at least in my opinion when I was watching it, I never thought that they were doing this with the intention of actually getting the person out of there safe and sound. They're truly doing this because they see this as their duty and they see it as this is just the right thing to do. Except for maybe Patrick Wilson's character. I feel like a part of him feels like he knows it's a lost cause, but is in a state of denial and is kind of refusing to accept the reality of how the probability is completely against him at this point. But I think that's also kind of a huge theme of this film and also of Patrick Wilson's character, which is basically to never give up and always keep some sort of faith and always try your best to persevere against the odds. Because religious faith is definitely a theme amongst this film, and it's definitely expressed through Patrick Wilson's character. And honestly, I think that particular faith-based theme is expressed kind of well in this film. Like, even though, you know, I'm not a guy who thinks there's that much value in faith-based beliefs, it's not about really what I personally believe. It's about how a film goes about expressing its themes. And I do think that theme was expressed fairly well in this film. But yeah, so that's kind of the cornerstone of Patrick Wilson's character. But then you have Richard Jenkins' character, who is, in my opinion, the best character in this film, and quite honestly the best aspect of this film, period. Not only does he give a great performance per usual, but his character is explored incredibly well and is incredibly written. I think he was one of the more layered and likable characters in this entire film. You could just tell that Zahler put a lot more emphasis on Jenkins' character, more than any other character, in my opinion. Because he just comes off so incredibly genuine, and he's hilarious throughout this film. Honestly, the comedy in this film in general actually worked quite well. So he was awesome in this film. He's my favorite character, and quite possibly one of the best things about the film. Then you have Kurt Russell, who plays a sheriff in this film, and he's perfectly casted. Kurt Russell just tends to have the perfect face and aura for an authority figure, and for some reason fits really well in a Western setting. And he knocks it out of the park in this film. I didn't find his character to be that incredibly layered, but he's definitely a really engaging type of character in this film. Really honorable in a lot of ways. But yeah, after this long stretch in the second act, shit just pops off and gets, like I said, incredibly brutal and relentless with its violence. And that's one thing that I loved about this film, because when shit pops off, things will happen in a split second that you wouldn't really expect to happen to these characters. It's completely unafraid to have characters fail so quickly and to go through these perilous situations and have characters die within a drop of a hat. And that's one aspect of the film that I feel like made it really unpredictable. And it's quite odd because there are some moments in this film that use practical effects for the violence, and some of it's incredibly obvious that it's a dummy. And that was something that I also noticed with Brawl in Cell Block 99, where they just use this obvious stationary dummy to portray violence. And I could see it being a cheesy turnoff for a lot of people. I won't even blame you if that's how you perceived it. But for some reason, it, funny enough, kind of works. I don't know if it's because it kind of just takes you back to a different era in filmmaking that's kind of warm and cuddly. But something about it, I feel like, worked. And I feel like it shouldn't have worked. But all I know is that it didn't bother me. And one other aspect of this film that I really liked and thought it was smart on Zahler's part was that they included a Native American character in the first act that, allows the audience to understand that he's not being one-dimensional here with the premise. Because this is a film that does depict a certain Native American type of tribe to be these relentless, cannibalistic savages. And I love that he had a normal Native American person in this film that is even himself offended at these types of natives that continue to exist.
You're afraid of your own kind?
They're not my kind. They're a spoiled bloodline of inbred animals who rape and eat their own mothers.
And to me, it just kind of puts to rest anybody who would try to interpret that Zahler is trying to portray natives in, a racist or negative light. But there are a handful of things about this film that did bug me quite a bit. The first thing I'm going to say that was the most apparent to me was the editing style of this film. Because I guess you really even call it a style, but this film has way too many cuts. There's normal conversation scenes that I swear to God will have like 15 to 20 different cuts in it. And it's just so unnecessary, and it just feels like it's without proper vision. There's not much personality behind it. It's just kind of like they pointed cameras in a bunch of different directions and just chopped it together in post. And it made the film really distracting, and I feel like made it feel less authentic. And there's also this really odd stylistic choice of having a handheld type of camera movement throughout normal calm scenes that just didn't make much sense to me and was kind of distracting. But it's a shame because there are tons of stunning and beautiful wide shots in this film that made me wonder, like, why couldn't we have entire scenes of just people talking or moments of action that are just these wide shots? I mean, there was one scene in particular where they break into like a barn, and that was honestly one of the better scenes in the film because that was Zahler actually choosing to stay on that beautiful wide shot. And I wish he would have done more of that in this film, but instead there's a lot of different parts throughout his entire film where there's just needless cutting and just going back and forth between these really, basic and conventional camera angles that just did nothing for me and just made the film distracting and, again, less authentic in my opinion. And also, I wasn't a fan of a handful of the dialogue in this film. I think most of it is either good or great, but there's a handful of it that I just think completely missed because it's either just cheesy or, again, just comes off phony. Like, this is just like script writing dialogue and I don't really get the vibe that this is actually what this character would say at this moment. The female character in this film, she's not in this film long, but I do feel like she was the most poorly written character in this film. There's nothing really that interesting that's written in her character, and overall, like, she didn't have that much of a character to her. So I'm going to give Bone Tomahawk a strong 7 out of 10. And I'm looking forward to watching Dragged Across Concrete sometime soon, so that's about it, guys. That's all I got to say about Bone Tomahawk. If you really enjoy what I had to say about this film, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.